This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Since the dawn of time, humans have enjoyed the simple pastime of just looking after a little guy. In fact, I'm willing to bet that a lot of people watching this video right now are currently looking after a little guy, whether that little guy is a cat, a pet rock, a Tamagotchi, an actual child, or a Neopet who's probably dying of starvation by now. You are so cruel to forget him. I don't know what it is, but there's something about caring for little fellas that people seem to enjoy, which is why pet care simulators have historically been so popular as a genre, especially in the mobile market. But it wasn't always that way. Enter Poe, one of the pioneers of the mobile pet sim market and one of the most popular mobile games ever with hundreds of millions of downloads. It also happens to be pretty weird, but I'm sure that you already caught on to that by now. Today let's take a trip back to the App Store boom of the 2010s to take a look at Poe, the virtual blob that took over the world. Let me take you back in time, back to when iPhone home screens looked like this, and the answer to do you have games on your phone was almost always yes, I have Temple Run and Fruit Ninja, but don't spend any of my coins because I'm saving up for the Scarlet Fox skin. It was the 2010s, of course, and the mobile market was experiencing a huge boom. Apps and games were reaching levels of virality that you'd never see these days, to the point where they were ingrained in internet and pop culture. Games like Flappy Bird, Subway Surfers, Where's My Water, Temple Run, Talking Tom, Jetpack Joyride, Angry Birds, Candy Crush, and more. These games were getting millions of downloads, everyone was talking about them, and they were earning their respective developers a nice paycheck with plentiful in-app purchases. But there was a bit of a gap in the market. During the 90s and early 2000s, handheld virtual pets like Tamagotchi had reigned supreme, and the genre found similar roaring success in the mid to late 2000s on PC with websites like Neopets and AWAS. But now, in the 2010s, the App Store was where it was at, and the virtual pet genre was conspicuously absent. That's not to say that there weren't virtual pet games available at the time, and popular games like Talking Tom and Angela did have pet care elements, but there was clearly a very lucrative market that wasn't being fully tapped. That was until Poe came along. So, a quick note about this game, the pronunciation is a little bit contentious. My friends and I grew up playing it and we always pronounced it Poe like Edgar Allan, but during my research I've watched and read a decent amount of videos and articles on the game, and the most common pronunciation seems to be Pooh, as in, well, I probably don't need to explain that one. Meanwhile, Wikipedia lists both Pooh and Poe as accepted pronunciations. I don't know whether it's like a New Zealand language / accent thing, or whether me and my friends just thought we were too good for Pooh, but for this video I'll just be pronouncing it Poe because that's what I'm used to. Sound off in the comments how you pronounce it, hashtag Team Poe or Team Pooh, but they're spelled the same so no one will be able to tell which team everyone is actually on. It'll be fun! So Poe was released on August the 5th of 2012 for iOS, Android, and BlackBerry 10. That's how you really know it's from 2012. The game cost around $2 on the Apple App Store but was free on Google Play, though there were still copious amounts of in-app purchases to offset that. It was developed by programmer, game developer, and designer Paul Salome, who lived in Beirut and developed multiple games before Poe. Most of them were fairly basic Flash games. Persian Maze was a simple maze game, and Little Farmer was a 3D farming game inspired by Farmville. Some of them were very explicitly political games. In Whack a Politician, you have to quote whack Lebanese politicians' heads during their speeches before 50 Lebanese citizens leave for the plane. In M3AMEE, you have to paint a bunch of sheep who are painted with the colors of Lebanese political parties white. And in Fly Bay Mission, you control a helicopter in Beirut to deal with quote fires, evacuations, and conflicts which occur throughout the region. Needless to say, Poe was a departure from these games. The premise of the game is that Poe is a quote-unquote alien pet that you have to look after. Feed it, play with it, and clean it to keep it in good health and prevent it from getting sick. As Poe grows, your level goes up and you unlock more food, wallpapers, and outfits to customize it with. Poe fit perfectly into that untapped pet sim market, and it almost immediately became a smash hit. At first, at least as I remember it, it was kind of an ironic thing. The art was pretty rudimentary. Poe itself looked like it was made using the MS Paint shape tool, and a large majority of the assets were just PNGs of food and other items. The colors and fonts were very basic, most of the games were rip-offs of other titles, and the overall premise and look was silly, goofy, kinda quirky for lack of a better word. So at first it was a little bit of a joke. You'd hear about this silly new game that everyone was playing and you'd download it just for the lols. But over time this sort of mocking attitude towards Poe turned into genuine endearment and eventually obsession. Poe was pretty cheap looking and kinda silly, but it was in a charming way that really hooked players in and got them to care about the little guy. Thousands of downloads turned into millions, and then tens of millions, and eventually literally hundreds of millions. According to the Google Play Store numbers, as of today, Po has over 500 million downloads and still counting. But what exactly makes Po so appealing? Well, let's take a look at the game to find out. When you first download the app, your Po will be a baby and you'll only be level 1. As you feed, play with, and take care of Po, your levels will increase, unlocking more items, and Po will grow. The game lists in percentage form how close Po is to becoming an adult, though you can also pay real currency to buy an adult potion that'll do it instantly. Po has 4 different stats: food, health, fun, and energy. Food is fairly self-explanatory. Po's hunger will drop throughout the day and you have to feed it to replenish it. You start the game with about 5,500 coins, and most basic food items are only like 3 to 6 coins each, so strategic money management and food purchasing isn't really an issue. You can kinda just go ham. There are a bunch of different categories for food, and each food has a set percentage of hunger and sometimes even health that it will replenish, with the higher tier foods being locked until you reach higher levels. Sweet foods tend to replenish slightly less hunger but restore more fun. Hearty foods like soup and seafood restore the most hunger but are locked behind much higher levels, and there are even foods that can harm Po, like the chili pepper, which basically just fucks him up. Like I said though, the basic level 1 foods are super cheap and fairly filling, so the higher level unlockable foods feel more like cosmetic items than actually useful items. Though Po can get a little finicky while eating and will sometimes refuse to eat food that you give it with a high-pitched sound effect. This sound became pretty iconic and memed on, and I even remember it becoming a sort of inside joke in my family. Fun fact, in an interview with wamda.com, which is basically the only trace I could find of Paul Salome ever doing an interview or talking to the press, he confirmed that he had voiced all of Po's sound effects. He also confirmed that Po was named after himself, since his real life nickname among friends was Po. The more you Po. Po can get sick if its health need drops low, so it's important to keep it healthy with potions. Aside from the health potions, there are also the aforementioned real currency adult and baby potions, potions that max out stats, and again a weirdly cruel hunger potion that makes Po starve. I'm assuming this is aimed at the type of people who play The Sims just to drown their Sims in a pool. There's also a bathroom where you can soap Po up and wash it when it becomes dirty, as well as pick up Po's, well, Po. This feels wrong. Po's fun meter can be filled by feeding it sweet treats, throwing a ball around the screen, or playing minigames. There's quite a wide variety of minigames available to play in Po, most of which are pretty blatant knockoffs of other popular App Store games. Sky Jump is Doodle Jump, complete with motion controls, moving and disappearing platforms, spring jumps, and umbrellas. Jet Po is Flappy Bird, you tap the screen to jump through the gaps at different heights. Food Swap is Candy Crush, but with real life food PNGs instead of candy. And Hill Drive is a basic version of Hill Climb Racing, which was a super popular game during this era. You get the idea, most of the games are pretty basic platforming or puzzle games. But after all that exercise, Po will be all tuck it out, and that's where energy comes into play. The most basic of the needs, Po's energy can be replenished by simply putting it to bed and switching off the lamp, allowing it to sleep. This downtime period is a pretty popular gameplay element for mobile games. If a player can play the game endlessly, they'll quickly burn themselves out and get bored. However, if you force the player to wait real world time, it will not only give them a much needed break, but it gives the game more of a slow burn feel that keeps players hooked for longer. For a game like Po, which is all about growing and bonding with your virtual pet, that slow and steady pace is super important. There's also a yard that you can access. Here you can use a cloud to water some flowers, kick around a soccer ball, access the garage, which basically just lets you play the driving and skateboarding minigames, which you can also just access from the main menu, and you can see your pet and take it for a walk. The yard isn't really that useful. You can coast through the entire game without ever having to use it, since you can easily access all of the games and activities from the game room and the house, and watering the flowers doesn't really do anything, but it's still a fun little touch. Once you've spent enough time looking after Po, it'll grow up into an adult. Adult Pos, unlike baby Pos, can be fully customized in many different ways. You can choose a variety of body colors, eye colors, outfits, hats, glasses, and wigs to zhuzh your Po up and give it some style. You can also give it makeup like these sultry eyeshadows and lipsticks in a variety of colors. Weirdly, you can buy your Po shoes, which seems to change its entire anatomy, giving it feet that it never had before. I don't like it. I feel deeply that Po is a shoeless being. Of course, most of the items in the shop are extremely expensive and locked behind higher levels, which is where most of the incentive lies to keep playing the game. Customization is one of the biggest draws for games like these, so making food and potions relatively cheap but outfits prohibitively expensive is a good way to keep players motivated to check back every day. You can also customize many other things in the house, from the color of the soap to the color of the lamp to various different wallpapers and outdoor scenes to the very pet that Po owns. Pretty much every aspect of the game can be customized to the player's liking as long as they have enough coins to do so. Naturally, with its rudimentary simple charm, fun and addictive gameplay, extensive customization, and of course, the little guy himself, Po became a viral phenomenon. So much so that imitators and knockoffs began almost immediately flooding the App Store. Mo was the biggest offender, being an unabashed clone of Po, with the only difference being that the two had a slightly different body shape. My Boo, developed by Taps Games, was a slightly less blatant but still fairly egregious pet care app with very similar gameplay. One of the most prominent Po imitators, Frojo Games, came out with a virtual pet called Moi, which got tons of sequels and spin-off games. In what I like to call Poception, My Boo, the Po knockoff, has a knockoff game of its own called My Chew, and My Chew has a list of imitation games itself. I think we've gone too deep here. Potato 3D is a horrifying 3D Po knockoff that looks like this, and Bo, Virtual Pet, is a pet care game where you look after a round, puffle-like creature. And that's just scraping the tip of the Po-like iceberg, but you get the point. This app was extremely popular and everyone was trying to get in on it. By 2015, it had hundreds of millions of players, and according to licenseglobal.com, it was announced that that year Po would be, quote, getting the 3D treatment. Unfortunately, the Google Plus page where this was originally announced is now inaccessible because Google Plus is no longer a thing and there's no archive on the Wayback Machine. However, we can gather some context clues from the official Po Twitter account. Around 2015, it was mainly just used to alert players about new updates or products and post fun pictures and captions. And there is this one post that is incredibly well-meaning but is just phrased in a very unfortunate way. However, what we're interested in is this link to a Facebook post made in November of 2015 captioned, "Po is up to something, let's be aware to more signs." The image depicts Po in a distinctly rendered style, indicating that this was meant to be a teaser for the new 3D Po game. A Happy New Year post for 2016 posted shortly after also reflects this 3D style. After these posts, both the Twitter and the Facebook fell dormant for 4 years with zero updates. However, in recent years, the accounts have sporadically come back to life to occasionally tweet out teasers and then go back on hiatus for a number of years. A New Year's post in December of 2020 depicts a family of Poes in a new 3D style, which actually looks 3D this time, and shortly after they updated their profile picture to the new 3D Po image. The last post they made was just over 2 years ago for Valentine's Day 2021, but it just uses a regular screenshot from the current app. The game is still being updated fairly regularly, and an App Store update 2 weeks ago apologizes for the late updates and promises that they're still working on something big. So who knows what the story is? It's unbelievable to me that despite how insanely big Po was, it never really became anything. According to TechCrunch, it was one of the most downloaded apps of the decade with hundreds of millions of fans. Other games like Subway Surfers, Angry Birds, and even Talking Tom turned their popularity into huge global franchises with merchandise, toys, and animated series. Po kind of languished. As far as I can tell, Po did release some official, or at least what I believe to be official, plushies during the height of its popularity, but these days all I can find is an official Zazzle merch store. It didn't become a licensed pop culture empire like Angry Birds, and despite the presumably huge stream of revenue from the game, it never developed further. The 3D game still hasn't eventuated 8 years after the announcements, and there were no further spin-off games or animated series that followed, even though I can literally imagine an official Po animated story YouTube channel getting like 40 million subs and becoming the next Cocomelon, Popomelon if you will. Like I said, I just find it hard to believe. It seemed like Paul Salome had really captured lightning in a bottle, and since then it's just been left to fizzle out. But that's not the worst thing in the world. With how much money Paul Salome would have made off Po over the years, he's probably in a pretty good spot, and maybe he just doesn't feel the need to turn it into a franchise. That's not to say that Po isn't still enjoyed by many. It definitely is. The game's had a bit of a resurgence in the mainstream since this meme depicting a miserable looking Po has gone viral and become a popular reaction meme, which, yeah, this image is incredibly funny. It's hard to imagine anything looking more pathetic than that. But it's also still enjoyed unironically by fans all across the globe. Just check out these glowing reviews. I am 10 years old now. I used to play this game since I was 8 years old. Is Po a piece of poop? Why doesn't it have arms or legs? Why is Po so brown? It must be a piece of poop. And to get 30 free coins, I have to watch an ad. I could rate this app 4 stars, but because I like this app so much, I'm giving 5 stars. So I love the game so much. It's like so freaking cute. I love how when he's super hungry, his eyes and mouth are so hard eyes emoji, hard eyes emoji, hard eyes emoji. Cute. Hard eyes emoji, hard eyes emoji, hard eyes emoji. And when he doesn't want to go to bed, his face is like How can that not be absolutely adorable? Anyways, I love the game. I love the game so much. I also have a suggestion for this game. Po should die at some point, but you don't lose anything, and you also have the option to start from scratch or revive, and there should be a revive and a die potion. Good, but I paid for more coins, and then I found my old account signed in, and the coins I paid for weren't there. Like, I get that the account doesn't have that purchase on it, but I'm not getting that £2 back. What were they thinking would happen here? Anyway, I genuinely hope that Po does get a new game. They seem to have been dropping hints more and more lately, but with how unreliable they've been with teasers and hints over the years, who knows when it will actually come out. It's been in development for like 8 years, so I'm sort of expecting like a cross between Elden Ring and Fallout 3, but still $2 on the App Store, of course. Before we wrap things up here, I just want to give a huge thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Squarespace gives you a powerful and beautiful online platform from which to create your website, connect with your audience, and generate revenue through gated members-only content. Manage your members, send email communications, and leverage audience insights all on one super duper easy to use platform. With powerful blogging tools, you can categorize, share, and schedule your posts as well. Squarespace has tons of awesome e-commerce capabilities for shops and small businesses. Squarespace extensions can help you manage inventory, promote products, streamline bookkeeping, reconcile and file sales tax, and ship items across the globe. Display posts from your social media on your site and automatically push website content to your socials so your followers can share it too. Create a community with a fully integrated commenting system that supports threaded comments, replies, and likes. Go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/izzies to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you so much to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. And thank you guys so much for watching it. I really appreciate it. Po was a treasured childhood memory for me, despite how like weird the game is and how kind of cheap it is. I mean, it was clearly incredibly popular despite those things, but you know, I liked it as well. I played it a lot. Me and my family would always joke about it. Me and my friends played it together. It's an odd bonding experience. But yeah, I'm really curious to hear about your guys' personal experience with Po. I know that like obviously a lot of kids were into it. A lot of kids nowadays seem to be into it, but especially back in the sort of 2012 era when it was first coming out, it was extremely popular. So yeah, sound off with your Po experiences in the comments. How long did you leave your Po before it became sick and dying? What am I even following that up with? Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Let me know in the comments if you ever have any other topics that you want me to cover. I really want to cover more like iPhone, App Store, 2010s era nostalgia, because I was all about that shit when I was a kid. So yeah, I'm definitely keen to cover more of that stuff. If you have any other topics, let me know. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much to Squarespace for sponsoring the video. And yeah, I really hope to see you in the next one. Bye! A huge thank you to my Garfield overlords over on Patreon: Sheriff Whiskey, Xavier Raho, SHSL Sunsun, Crip Gunderson, Simon, Katrina Likes 5e Stuff, Oliver Lols, Dozo Blint, The Furby Librarian, Matt LRJ, Ren Pendragon, Michelle Olsen, a riddle wrapped in an enigma hidden by a question mark, Tentabat, Astrium Vortex, Electro Kitten, Joe Bradshaw, John Leach, Jorge K. Cruz, Strawberries, Helm Hamburger Hand, Fitzy, Dave Martinez, Dana Homegardener, Jesse Chisholm, Charlie B, Carmel Coffee Bean, Fish000, Blue Mayfeld, and Doug. Thank you guys so much for supporting me. It means the world. If you want to join these guys over on Patreon, the link will be in the description. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I really hope to see you in the next one. Bye!